We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. There is a shock of shock this week's because Tom and I both ventured out to the theater. We're going to talk all about that in just a minute here, but that is a rare occurrence to have both of us go to the theater.
I was trying to figure out when the last time I went to the movies was, and I don't. It was Black Panther.
Could be. Not even Black Panther 2. Black Panther 1?
No. Black Panther 1.
That's a while ago.
I mean, the last movies, I've seen Rogue One in the theaters.
That's definitely before that, yep.
I've seen Wonder Woman in the theaters. I don't think I saw Solo. Did I see Solo in the theaters? I don't remember seeing Solo
I don't
in the
remember.
theaters. I saw The Last Jedi or whatever, The Last Skywalker or whatever that stupid
There's a theme
The Rise
going
of
on
Skywalker.
here. Yes.
Yeah, so it was all obviously pre-COVID.
Yep.
But, yeah, this is the first time I've been to the movies since COVID.
Okay.
And I still have no desire to go to the movies.
Right. I didn't download that picture that you sent. I'll insert that later on in the edit if you're okay with me showing that picture.
Oh, yeah,
that
that's
you texted
fine.
me.
Yes.
Let's talk about that first before we get into what we watched this week, which of course involves what we both went out to the theater separately, obviously on opposite coasts in different countries, to see. Tom had an experience just movie theater wise.
Right. So there's an IMAX theater here in town.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of theaters. I mean, I live near Tampa.
Yeah.
So there's theaters everywhere. And the big IMAX theater or whatever, I don't like ordering tickets online where it's pre-seating because for IMAX, because I never really know where I want to sit in the IMAX theater.
Yeah, sometimes the little diagrams they show you are not exactly precise, and what looks like the center seat on the diagram is not actually the center seat in the real theater. Yes, I know.
And I definitely don't want to be too close, and I don't want to be too far back, so I'm like... and the seats, I was like, these are probably the seats I would want, and they were all taken.
Okay.
And I didn't want to sit off to the side. Okay. So I'm like, okay. So I looked at another theater, and there was a theater, a Regal Theater, Regal Theater here in town. They have the RPX experience. What is that? I don't know.
It's got X in it. They all have X. We have
it's experience. I think it's a premium experience, Regal premium experience.
I think we call it AVX or something here where I am. But yes, as long as it has an X in the name, you know.
Tactile transducers in the seats, definitely. Okay. I mean, you can feel them. You can't control them, turn them down. I know that for a fact. But there's definitely there. And the power recline and everything. So, and more leg room. So you can be reclined and people can walk past you. It's not a big, you don't have to like stand up like I used to have to in theaters before, blah, 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 blah. It was a little more expensive. We went to a matinee. And so we got there very early because I'm very used to getting there very early so that you can get the good seats, but you already have reserved seats. So
yeah, you don't really need to in that case for that reason. It's not necessary.
There's a lot of things that annoyed me about this experience. But when I got there, the lights are all on the theater, and I'm looking at these seats. I'm like, geez, they are rough. These seats. You've seen them. You've seen leather recliners or pleather like office chairs sitting on the side of the road in front of people's houses waiting to be picked up by the garbage or anybody else who might want it. And the leather pleather or whatever it is completely like worn away so that there's almost nothing. There's just threadbare and that's these seats. Like they should never turn the lights up in these theaters. This theater should always be pitch black.
Even if they did, it was remarkably bad condition.
Very bad.
Yeah, I mean, so it was clearly the part where, this is where people's heads are touching the headrest, and these are where the butts go, and these are where the arms go. But it's like, I literally asked this in a text message to Tom. I'm like, was someone sent in there to do a cleaning and they brought steel wool? Because that is what it looked like. It was horrendous. What on earth? How could they think that's acceptable?
Well, I mean, for $50 for three of us to go to the movies.
Yeah.
What do you expect?
Right.
What kind of quality would you expect? It's almost like when people complain about this was the lowest sales of tickets, whatever, everybody's like, yeah, I've been to the theater lately. I don't want to pay to go back either. What are you talking about?
And it wasn't the movie's fault.
No. Wasn't the movie's fault. Wasn't the movie's fault. So yes, the theater was in just dire condition.
Wow.
I've never seen a movie theater that bad, to be honest with you. That looked like I didn't want to really sit in that seat. I didn't have a choice, but I didn't really want to sit there because it was,
like the part that would be easy to spray and wipe down is gone at this point, and now you're into the highly absorbent material that never biodegrades, but things can thrive and live in there. So I don't know. I wouldn't want the back of my head touching that either. That looked bueno.
It did. So I did sit there. So Rob, what did you see this week?
All right. Well, before we get into our shared movie experience, I will say I finished up Loki season 2. It was excellent. I really enjoyed this show. I would say, for if you have not watched any of the Loki whatsoever, this is very much season 1 and season 2 are one story. That's 12 episodes total, because season 1 was only 6 episodes, season 2 was only 6 episodes. So saying that this is really just a single season is no stretch whatsoever. And it really is. It is one cohesive, complete story in those 12 episodes. It actually has an ending, and whether they need to reference this and tie it back into the greater MCU at all, I don't know if they do. It's not really necessary. This was a very satisfying conclusion and a wonderful story arc that they went on. The music in this final episode of season 2, holy smokes. I mean, it reminded me of like what John Williams did in episode 3, where it was like, oh, you're taking all the themes and you are going to weave them all together, and you're going to have us tearing up just at the sheer brilliance of how well all of these musical themes managed to work together. They quite obviously during the intro, just like the Marvel logo intro, ran the music and the Marvel logo backwards because of all the timey-wimey stuff that's going on with Loki and that. But even having the Loki theme playing in outright reverse still sounded good. I was like, holy smokes. The music was on another level. The editing was just absolutely remarkable in the second season. If it doesn't win an Emmy for editing, I think that's a travesty, because it's really, really well done. So yeah, I have tremendously high praise for it. I do think you could absolutely watch the Loki series completely standalone on its own. It'll be obviously a little bit confusing in that first episode if you've never seen anything of the Avengers or Endgame or anything like that, but you can get by that part pretty quickly, and the rest of it is able to be told as a self-contained story. There are images in that finale that it's like, yeah, that is very much ripped straight from a comic book, but adapted extremely well for the screen, and really, really did a wonderful job of adapting comic book stories to a television series instead. So high praise for that. So then, I don't know. Do you want to say a few other things before the movie?
Yeah, I'll talk about what I watched.
Sure.
So a couple things happened with me this week. Oh, geez, that was bigger than I thought it was going to be. Sorry about that. Hold on. Let me paste without
Tom
formatting.
Tom is putting links into the show notes. That's what's going on.
Not on purpose. Yeah. So I watched Spider-Man Far From Home, which is the more recent of the two.
Far From Home would be the second one.
Second one.
Out of the Tom Holland trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of the Trump. Yes. And it was fine.
Had you not seen it before? You hadn't seen Far From Home before?
I have seen it. I think I talked about it on the podcast.
Was a rewatch,
but, it's been a really, really long time. And I was like, well, I'm only rewatching things on the small screen.
Gotcha.
I've got the Bluetooth speaker all the way up to max, but because of Disney's volume stupid thing with some of the older content, it's really quite low. So I have it. I'm trying to experience as best I can. But I actually really appreciated the story in general. I think how they handled Mysterio was very, very good. A little bit of the like, this was all planned from the beginning. For those of you that haven't seen it, I won't really spoil anything. But this was all one big plan, and it all worked out exactly.
Yes,
yeah. You're like, what was it though?
But they had fun with it. They
did, and I thought Mysterio. I thought how they did Mysterio made like a lot more sense than what he usually does, which is like drug people and they all have the same hallucination or whatever, which, I don't know. Anyways, so I thought it was and Jake Gyllenhaal is just great. I thought he was great in this. I think he's great in just about everything. Yep. But he looked enough like a superhero / Steve Jobs wannabe kind of person. You know what I mean? He had enough bulk that he looked like he worked out, but he didn't look like Thor, so I was I very much liked him. Of course, it's hard not to. And then it's actually, you can see how COVID completely screwed everything up because there was so much in here that I was like, oh, now that I've seen Secret War, it makes sense why they were doing this, but it's all like super delayed and out of.
You mean Secret Invasion?
Invasion, whatever.
Yeah, because there's going to be an Avengers Secret Wars at some point, so got to keep our titles straight. It's very important around here.
The invasion thing, like that all sort of started to make sense.
Okay.
Like, oh, that's right. Okay, because I never really understood that post credits.
Okay.
I also went to the Florida Orchestra to see live music. There was my wife got tickets through her work, and it was Hollywood's Golden Age is what it was called, and it's basically like music from movies, essentially.
Yes.
And like some really famous stuff, and a bunch of there was a little bit of classical. There's like a Mozart concerto in there, but that was used in a movie.
All right.
And then therefore, whatever. Anyways, the movie, like nobody had ever seen it. Like nobody's heard. I never heard of it, and I've heard of a lot of movies. So but it was the thing that got me, because I was really kind of paying attention to how things sounded, mostly because I was trying desperately not to fall asleep. And this is not because I'm I don't like live music or because it's orchestra or whatever. It's because I had gone on a ride that morning for like 50 plus miles. And I got home from that ride, and my wife was supposed to take my son to go see this, but my son was like throwing a fit, and he's got homework to do and everything else. And she's like, why don't you come with me? I'm like, let me take a shower. So I was like, I could barely walk. My legs were killing me. Physically tired. So I was trying to stay awake, and I was paying attention to the sound. And mostly what I was trying to do was like, people are often like, in their home theaters, like, well, it's you gotta be lifelike. You want things to be lifelike. I'm like, okay, well, this is lifelike.
Yeah,
this is
recreate the live experience. This is literally the live experience.
Right. But I mean, they do have speakers in here and everything. Okay. So I mean, they just amplified. It's not unamplified.
Oh, okay. It was reinforced sound then.
So I was kind of paying attention. I'm like, it's interesting to hear the difference between the bass and the treble in live performance in a venue this large, because the bass really does surround you a bit. It doesn't feel like it's coming from behind you, because nothing does, but you feel like the bass is kind of all around you. Like the lower the note is, the more it sounds like it's coming from your sides.
Okay.
Whereas the treble and the mid-range all sounds like it's coming directly from the front.
Sure.
Which, of course, all of it's coming from the front. The interesting thing was I was listening for like really low notes, right? All these people trying to get their sub 20 hertz, whatever.
Well, yeah.
Subwoofers and stuff.
From an orchestra, you're not gonna get below 32 hertz. So.
That's right, and and it was very interesting to hear like the low timpanis and some of the low notes. And yes, they could give you that sense of kick you in the chest sort of bass to a certain extent, but even with the amplification, it wasn't like killing you. It wasn't like it wasn't vibrating your whole seat.
It's not car audio.
Unlike the movie theater I was in, where the seats literally vibrated.
And that wasn't from the sound. That was from the tactile transducers.
Oh my god, I love it when it was doing it during the commercials beforehand, and it was like, I don't think the sound is low enough. Oh, here we go. So, but it was very interesting to hear the sound and knowing that there's instruments on different sides of the stage and all of that, and really completely unable to pick out that there are instruments on different sides of the stage.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? It all sounds pretty mono once it gets to
because you're
the time
sitting
it
quite
gets to you.
far away in the audience of a full-size auditorium. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. And we were actually a little bit off to one side because they were not great seats, but they were pretty good seats. They were on the floor at least. And we were on the side with the bass and all the basses. But during one song there was they actually used a bass guitar, electric bass guitar, and there was an amplifier like literally right there. So I know that the amplifier was like I was on the same side as the amplifier, and it was a little bit to my right. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can. Nope. It just sounds like it's coming from everywhere.
Yep.
So very. I love all these armchair music aficionados who are like, well, I've seen thousands of live performances, and this doesn't sound anything like a shut up. That's what it doesn't sound like. It doesn't sound like you shut up.
You're actually getting a whole lot more detail and separation at home than the live event.
Oh,
so
my God.
That's the direction, not the other way around.
And we're back. If you thought we didn't go anywhere, we did. So we were talking about the orchestra or whatever, and then Rob's computer took a big fat Canadian dump.
You know, it was the whole on blue screen of death right there. So yeah, there's going to be a weird edit. We don't usually have any edits going on in here. I couldn't for the life of me remember what I said after the point that the audio recording part finished off, but I think we got to some sort of completed thought about the orchestra thing, so we're just
basically
it
all sounds mono. Don't worry about it. So sure. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Okay. It's a little bit of surround, not that much mono, and people who say that they're experts because they went to a lot of live recordings or live shows, or like if you weren't sitting in the middle, like literally on stage in the middle of all these instruments with no amplification or all the amplification coming towards you, even then it would probably still sound like not the kind of separation we get in some of these Blu-ray and DVDs.
I had said on the last one there that like one of the things you notice in recordings that are made that are planned from the beginning to be a live recording event, they'll have multiple microphones. It's not just recording a concert that was going on that they happen to record with a couple of microphones out in the audience. They'll actually have individual mics that are clipped to certain instruments. They'll have multiple boom mics up there. So that is going to be like guaranteed a different experience than going to the live thing. But yeah, the point I did want to finish on as far as that goes was just saying I still think it's a very good idea to go out there and listen to actual live events. I think it's great to get that context and get that perspective. And yeah, it can kind of shift your evaluation of what you're truly trying to achieve at home. It doesn't necessarily all sound hyper realistic and hyper detailed the way sometimes people think, oh, that's what my audio system at home should be. If you're actually going for the live event experience, it could be a lot more subtle than that.
Yeah, just one speaker.
Yeah, well, there are proponents of mono out there, that is for sure.
All right, Rob, what did we watch? What did we go to the movies to see?
So I think we were talking about that, but yeah, now what we actually were toying with the teasing of what both of us ventured out to the actual movie theaters to see, which was, of course, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, The Marvels. Which is bringing back Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, played by Brie Larson, and then also bringing into the actual movie side of things her two co-leads, and I would definitely describe them as co-leads in this movie, not just supporting characters. Two characters from the Disney Plus side of things, the shows, Ms. Marvel, Iman Vellani playing Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, and Tiona Paris playing Monica Rambeau, who they make a whole thing throughout this movie about what her superhero name is going to be, and They never settled on it.
They never settled on it.
Referring to her as Photon are taking that from the comic books, where that is one of the superhero names that the character of Monica Rambeau
She's had more than one, yeah?
She's had multiple different names.
They did give her her actual costume, though, the one with the drapes.
Sure. Yeah. So, I do think that after watching this movie that they should have a very obvious superhero name for Monica Rambeau, and that should be Rambo Exposition. Because somebody, as Tom said to me in his text message, needed to explain that plot, and it fell to Monica Rambeau.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just. Of course, this will be spoiler free because we're not going to.
Oh yeah.
Spoilers. If we decide to talk spoilers, we'll do it after the break, after the end of the podcast. So after the music. Okay. I don't think we will, But if we decide to stay late and talk smack or talk about the specifics of the movie, we'll do it there. So it'll be easy for you to skip. Generally speaking, first of all, this movie's very short. It's an hour and 45 minutes. I mentioned that already. Shorter
than a lot of MCU movies, that's for sure.
Which is fine with me. I don't think movies have to be that long. Plot-wise, like Rob said, there's a lot of exposition here. It very much felt like they were like, we just need to keep this thing moving, and it doesn't have to make a ton of sense. So
yeah, like the explanation of, like, if you've seen any of the trailers whatsoever, this idea that they're kind of swapping places between the three co-leads. It's like there are words that people say about why and how that's happening. I could not repeat any of it to you right now. I have no idea why or how they were actually swapping places. Something about entanglement. Moving on.
Yes. Generally speaking, so if you're like, oh my god, I can't believe first of all, the YouTube bros will just take any opportunity they can to crap on any movie that has a female lead, and this has all female leads.
Forget them.
So don't look at the headlines of like, oh, it's the crappiest movie ever. No, it has it's not been a great moneymaker so far, and I have some theories about that. Not the least of which is I just went to the movie theater and I never want to go again. And I think there's a lot of people that are in the same boat as me.
Not just the seats.
Not just the seats, but just the entire experience was, pretty bad. So I can understand that. And there's also the whole, it's going to be on streaming not too long from now.
Yep.
And I don't care if you're Endgame or whatever, if Endgame came out now, there's some cannibalism that's going to go on with Disney Plus. It's just going to happen. Like, people are not going to. I didn't go to see Endgame in the theaters because I don't like to go into the theaters. I'd rather see it at home. I definitely want to see a movie that freaking long at home so I can take bathroom breaks, right, and everything else. So there's even more of that now that Disney Plus is available to people who are not going to, who will get a different experience in the theater that is theoretically better than what they get at home. So now that the Disney Plus is there, like, oh, I don't know, I'll just wait. So I think there's a lot of that going on. I thought the movie was great. I'm not going to say that it is the perfect movie in general, but in a universe where Thor: The Dark World exists,
sure,
and to a certain extent, all of the Iron Mans, the two Iron Mans after Iron Man 1 exist, I have no problem saying this is a very good Marvel movie. Does it make a ton of sense? No. Is there like glaring holes in the editing that I'm just like, they're not going to explain that. They're just going to be.
Yeah,
they're just
like
going to let that one go.
Cut out of here. That's how we got down to hour 45. There was stuff chopped.
I'll tell you what. First of all, I don't know if Iman Vellani can act. I don't know that she can. I don't know if she can or she can't. I would love to see her in something else where she acts. Because if this is her acting, she is the best. She may be the next Meryl Streep as far as I'm concerned. She is the best. I could watch her. Like, she made every scene. Every single scene in this movie. Oh,
I was saying, thank goodness she's there. Absolutely, I was saying that.
Oh, my God. I think the part that got me, that made me believe that she's not acting, she's just being herself, which is why I'm saying, and I'm not insulting her at all.
No. When you see her just in real life in interviews and stuff like that, she is that excited and geeked out to be part of the MCU.
Yeah. So there's a scene where there's music playing. There's music in the back, there's music all around them, right? And they were kind of walking through a city with music playing, and I swear they just like played some music and just didn't tell her not to dance. And she just started dancing, and I'm like, that just looks like somebody having the best time. And I just absolutely loved every moment of seeing her in this movie. I thought she was amazing. I actually thought everybody did a good job. The writing and maybe the editing wasn't great. I can't necessarily fault any one particular person for that, but like I thought Brie Larson was good. I thought whatever her name is,
Tiona Paris.
Tiona Paris was perfectly fine. Like a lot of times in these movies, and I've said this about Luke Cage. When Luke Cage came out, I was like, man, I like him. I like the character. He's not carrying the. To me, he doesn't have the gravitas to carry the series. Like I didn't really feel like he had enough presence to. I thought all three of these women could carry a movie by themselves. They didn't need the other two there to do it. Obviously, Brie Larson can do it. She's done it before.
Sure.
And Tiona, I'm going to keep Paris.
Yeah, I got to look up her name to make sure I got.
Yeah,
that right.
I'm going to keep messing up her name. I felt like she was perfectly fine, and I liked her in WandaVision as well. So, this whole, the whole dynamic of the movie I thought was good. I liked the power switching. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I will say, like, I have several small criticisms of this movie.
I've got more than small criticisms, but what I want to take the big takeaway from this is who cares? You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Who cares?
I mean, this
it was
is
a fun movie. I laughed
movie.
In fact, I'll tell you what. This is one of the few Marvel movies I was like, all those people complain that there's too many fight scenes and stuff like that. I was like, we didn't need the fight scenes at the end. Let's just keep having them talk. Because that's the best part.
Yeah, no, I was thinking to myself, I kind of would have liked the whole power switching thing to have played a bit more of a vital role in the ending of this movie. I thought that there was an opportunity for, because I mean, a whole bunch of this movie the theme is about turning a weakness or turning a mistake into a strength or into a triumph. That is the overarching theme of this movie. That's what this movie is about. And I was like, okay, so that's clearly set up. They have a literal montage of like, oh, we're going to practice our power switching. And I was like, oh, it didn't quite turn into the gigantic finale of using that to your advantage that I thought it would be. So that was a bit of a criticism just on the structure and writing.
I'll be honest with you, the final fight scene where they are switching their powers a lot, it harkened back for me as the original Michael Keaton Batman movie, where I was like, what is going on?
A little too quick, a little
too fast.
Yeah, a little
the
too
cuts
whippy.
were too fast.
Yep.
I wasn't really sure exactly what was going on. It didn't make like you needed to be able to see them like doing it on purpose, sort of thing is what you needed, and it was just sort of kind of happening, and I was like, that fight scene for me was one of the weakest part of the whole movie.
We've been editing this for so long that we've seen every frame so many times that it's clear to us, the editors, what's going on here, but not necessarily an audience watching it for the very first time. So I had a fun time at this movie. I don't think I liked it quite as much as Tom. I certainly didn't dislike it. I felt it was quite silly through most of it, which is not silly. Yeah. It's not a detriment. But I'm just saying that's
lighthearted. How about that?
Yeah, very much lighthearted. But I mean, also just plain silly in quite a few places, which I didn't mind. I wasn't angry at that. But yeah, most of the stuff that was going on with Nick Fury returning in this movie, he was a big part of the original Captain Marvel movie, and so he returns in this one, and I was like, I don't know. It felt quite separated from a lot of stuff, and I kind of got a meta kick out of the fact that I have said previously that I would be very happy if everything that happened in Secret Invasion on Disney Plus was just utterly ignored, and they moved on as though none of that had ever taken place. This was
clearly supposed to happen before Secret Invasion.
I think this was meant to be before Secret, but if it wasn't, they basically did that, because I'm like, I see no signs of Secret Invasion having any impact on this movie or Nick Fury the character whatsoever in the Marvels. There was no
I wonder if part of the reason why the
at
editing
all
seemed a little choppy is they had to cut Maria Hill out of everything, if she was around.
I guess there could be that. But anyway, look, it's a popcorn movie. It's a fun movie. I don't think it deserves. It certainly shouldn't be maligned as like the end of Marvel or anything like that. That doesn't make a lick of sense to me.
Everything's the end of everything. What are you talking about, bro?
Sure.
That's what the YouTube bros will tell you.
At the same time, I don't think it's like I'm demanding that everybody race out to the theaters and see it this instance because it's some kind of like, change to cinema. It's nothing on that sort of level. So yeah, it's perfectly fun time.
I think if you see this movie, you will not be like, that was a monstrous waste of my time.
Nope.
I think that you will leave the smile on your face and generally be like, yeah, that was fun. That was fine.
I felt that similar to the original Captain Marvel, there was stuff that was said, there were things that happened, and there were ideas in the script that were better than the actual execution of all of those things. I didn't get the big emotional charge at the moment where you were clearly supposed to be getting an emotional charge, and I was like, okay, like I get it, it's happening, I see it and I hear it being said, but I didn't feel it. So yeah, there's a fair amount of that, which is pretty common these days in a lot of movies. And so like when you see the EPKs and everybody talking about how much heart and thought and everything went into the movie, and I'm like, I believe you. The effort is there. Everybody brought their game. They were all putting the work and the effort in, but like somehow it just didn't emotionally land with me in much of any way. But similar to Loki, I felt like this is very, very comic book on the screen. Like,
sure.
To an extreme extent, to the point that if you really dislike comic books, then you should not see this movie. This isn't something that's going to make you suddenly appreciate the medium in a whole
I feel like it's more of a comedy than it is an action movie, really. To me, it got more of that going on. Who was the cameo guy? Who was the king or prince or whatever? Is he from a band? Is that like a BTS person? Who was that?
I don't know.
I was trying to figure out who that person was, but I'm pretty sure that I am too old to know who that person
We're both
is.
out of touch.
Very important to other people.
That's
so somebody in the
I'm
comments
sure.
will have to tell us who it is so that we can be
Anyway,
smart.
we're all
'Cause I'm not gonna Google it.
discombobulated on time on this podcast, but I'm pretty sure we definitely need to move on because we actually have quite a few questions to get to this week.
All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to the website, find our show notes as well as our Flickr albums where you can follow along. Where you might have to go there to find the picture of what those
There's going to be something on YouTube this week, but yeah, we're both logos. My OBS utterly crashed. I don't want everything to get lost yet again as my computer wigs out this week. So yeah, a bit of a rough one technically.
Yeah, so check out the Flickr album to follow along with the pictures that we're referring to. You can also find our older episodes there. You can find us on Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His social media is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom@avrant.com. I do not do other social media anymore because they don't want me and I don't want them. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Tyler. No, it's going to be a little confusing here because we've had a couple of Tylers.
Okay.
The problem is they also have the same last initial. So I can't give you a last initial.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
we had this is a Tyler.
Yeah.
And there was a Tyler before this, which is a different Tyler. And the Tyler before that was the same Tyler.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a different Tyler in between Tyler
Yes.
the first and third.
We're going to have to call him Tyler the first.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you for your donation. We very much
he went to
appreciate it.
avrant.com and clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. We also have 134 patrons currently at patreon.com/avrant podcast, where you can sign up to be a monthly contributor to the podcast. We got Jared and Bertrand as part of that contingent. So thank you to Jared and Bertrand as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Thank you, Bertrand, for being amongst our 134 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. That is the place to go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, if you please. So big thanks to everybody for your financial support.
Open up my LaCroix.
Oh, we heard it.
I like my
It is loud on that mic.
static flavored water, slightly lime
Yup.
suggested flavor. It's so not lime. I don't know what flavor that is, but it is not lime. It's
somewhat
not bad.
Citrus.
It's reminiscent of being tased in your tongue.
Yeah.
We also got if you can't support us financially, we understand. Just support us in some way and let us know what it is, and we'll mention you here. Casey let SVS know that he originally heard about them, and in particular how good their customer service is from us. So thank you, Casey, for talking us up to SVS.
Yes, thank you very much, Casey. We appreciate that. And glad that you had a good experience with SVS. We're going to hear a little bit more about that in either a comment or question or something coming up. But thank you very much for being a supporter of the podcast.
All right. We also got some notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going through the ongoing saga of the Marvels, I guess. Whatever the drama is behind that. There's all kinds of other stuff going on in the world.
Yep.
genocides and things.
Okay.
Geoff in Perth, Australia, says he continues to enjoy the podcast, especially whenever his urge to upgrade something returns. His wife still gets a kick out of our discussion about his first question a few years ago that inspired the episode titled 42-inch selfie stick. And he's been a listener since the Dina days. So I don't remember that, but whatever. Jay, Julian, who considers us his weekly dose of sanity. Jared, Casey, and Bertrand, who hopes things are improving for Tom and going well for Rob as well. I don't want to talk about the house, because it's
a bit of a rough week.
It's too long, but let me just say that we found out that we can't start with our repairs because the bathroom renovation we did during COVID never got closed out. So now we have to have somebody come in and inspect it. So yeah,
wow,
stuff. So Geoff, Jay, Julian, Jared, Casey, and Bertrand, thank you for thanking us.
Yep, and I'll say the names one more time. Geoff, Jay, Julian, Jared, Casey, and Bertrand, thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated right now. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you put lime in water and let it rot, that's what it tastes like, I think.
Enjoyable.
In the news, the SAG-AFTRA strike has ended. Woo!
Yeah.
But not everything is settled just yet. The union's bargaining committee and national board agreed with the AMPTP on a new 3-year tentative agreement that includes basic wage increases, bonuses for actors involved in successful streaming projects, and guardrails on the usage of AI to make sure there is consent and compensation. The board was 86% in favor. Now, the tentative agreement must be ratified by the voting union members, and that ratification is not quite as much of a sure thing as it was when the WGA was voting, that's the Writers Guild. Mm-hmm. The new agreement apparently includes many compromises and some fairly vague language still surrounding AI. My understanding is they have to revisit the AI thing every couple of years, too.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yep.
But for the moment, productions are allowed to resume. Actors are allowed to promote movies and TV shows again. And Hollywood is moving forward with the assumption that 2024's summer movie season can proceed as planned. You could do whatever the heck you want in summer of 2024. Let me tell you something about me. I will not be in the theaters because I did that already and I'm done.
Well, it's just a matter of as far as
I heard a little bit about this. I didn't read about it as probably Rob did, but I did hear a little bit about this. The AI thing, in particular, we've talked about a couple times on this podcast where, essentially what they want to do is scan you in and then be able to reuse you as much as you want. And now you have
perpetuity.
They have to get your consent to do that. Not just the scanning, but the using, and then you can not give your consent, or you can negotiate some sort of payment.
That's
and then they get to use it for whatever project they're currently working on. So, I mean, that sounded like it made sense to me, but the fact that it makes sense to me means nothing because I have no idea, what these people are actually reading or going through. So,
I would definitely expect that this will get ratified, but I also suspect, we'll see. By the time you're hearing this, it's probably all going to be out in the news, but I would also suspect that it might not get the 99% in favor yes vote that the Writers Guild did when they ratified their vote. I think there might be a little bit more dissent just because of some of the slightly vague language, not actually getting everything they were asking for, having conceded some compromises just to get this thing finally somewhat settled and most of the industry back to work. So I don't think it'll be quite the slam dunk, but I do think it will pass. We'll see if my prediction is true. You probably already know the results as you're hearing this.
Right. Ahead of its technically still just a rumor 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray release, James Cameron's The Abyss is getting a theatrical release. They're re-releasing a bunch of stuff in theaters if all the previews I saw are any indication, because there's quite a few things that are like, oh, you didn't remember this? Let's re-release it. Listen, no. And anyways, it's for one night only. And I saw The Abyss in theaters, and I've seen it at home a number of times, and I know people really love that movie. I don't get it. It's fine. It's fine. I got no problems with it, but it's not the great movie that I think everybody else seems to think it is.
It's taken on a whole different context in all the years coming afterward. It was a technical achievement at the time, recognized as so at the time, but I think perhaps appreciated even more so in hindsight for what it advanced on a technical level, CGI level. But yeah, as far as like actual plot and all that, I agree with you. It's not necessarily going to be blowing your hair back in those terms, but there you go. It is
I remember it being really
so.
freaking slow. Like, all these great people are going, does a great movie have to be slow? Does it have to be? I feel like it doesn't have to be. I feel like you can have movies that move along and be good still. Anyways. December 6th is the date when the Abyss Special Edition will be shown in theaters, with the marketing very clearly saying the movie has been remastered in 4K. That pretty much confirms that the Ultra HD Blu-ray version will indeed be released at some point. James Cameron has said as much, but there's still no official release date for the disc. So I'm not going to buy it. I don't care.
People have been waiting, so it's coming. It's coming, folks. And December 6th, you can see it in the theaters one night only. Get your advance tickets and get on out there if that's what you need.
So when Apple announced their $3,500 Vision Pro mixed reality headset, they mentioned that 3D movies could potentially be viewed in the virtual theater. The Apple TV Plus series Monarch Legends Legacy of Monsters has already been shot using an immersive video 3D format that is specifically intended for viewing with a headset, allowing you to turn your head to look around at a whole environment, which nobody has ever really wanted to do ever. Like, what?
Look away from the monsters.
These are the same people who are like, what's the director's intent? Well, the director's intent was for you to sit in your chair and look backwards. You know what? If you look around, you should be able to see the filming crew. You should see the director sitting behind you.
That would be cool.
But regular old 3D movies on a virtual movie screen inside of a virtual theater is also going to be offered. And now some 19 movie titles showed up in the Apple TV app, at least for a while, with a new 3D logo, the background of which is shaped like the Vision Pro headset. For $3,500, it should do a lot more than just 3D. Apple seems to have removed the 3D logo from those titles for now, but it's an indication that something is going on behind the scenes, in preparation at least. There's no sign at this point that 3D support will be extended to anything other than the Vision Pro headset. This is Apple. There is no chance they're going to support anything else. So don't hold your breath for playing 3D movies from your Apple TV 4K and your 3D capable projector just yet. No, there. First of all, you won't be able to watch other 3D supported things without Apple being remastered for Apple or whatever, so they can get their cut. Number one. Number two, there is just no chance that they're going to allow anybody else to play their 3D stuff that they made.
Just the way that the logo works with the shape of the Vision Pro headset in behind the 3D letters. Very, very clear what the intention is behind this. So yeah, I don't know that the Apple TV 4K even has like 3D output capability from its HDMI port, and I would not expect them, whenever they get around to releasing the 4th generation of the Apple TV 4K, to make that any sort of priority to add in 3D output to that thing. So yeah, I expect that this is a Vision Pro only type of feature. We'll see how many more titles get added.
The first MEMS-based earphones are here. We talked about MEMS a couple of weeks, last week, the week before, I don't remember. And they are a lot more affordable than we predicted. Creative has just released their new Aurvana.
That's what I would say. Aurvana. Something in that realm.
Ace series of true wireless, as opposed to fake wireless, Bluetooth earphones that uses xMEMS brand solid state drivers. There's the Creative Aurvana Ace and the Creative Aurvana Ace 2. I mean, you already put out a sequel.
That's right.
Why would you buy the first one? That's $130 for the Ace and $150 for the Ace 2. Outwardly, they have a similar shape to Apple AirPods, so nothing revolutionary there. Battery life should be around 6 hours, with a charging case included to provide around 24 hours of total battery life. For the extra $20, the Ace 2 model adds aptX lossless in addition to regular aptX, so your battery can die even faster. And while both Ace and Ace 2 have active noise canceling, Ace 2's is adaptive and dynamic, so it automatically attempts to balance canceling out unwanted noise while letting you hear important sounds, which obviously it knows how to do through the magic of AI. Both models claim a 5 Hz to 40 kHz frequency response. Sure, they vibrate, but there is a bit of a catch. As we mentioned, MEMS-based audio drivers aren't that great at producing bass yet. So these creative Aurvana series earphones are actually a dual driver hybrid design. The xMEMS drivers are acting as a tweeter and only producing the high frequencies, while traditional 10mm dynamic earphone driver handles the lower frequencies. So these can't be called a fully solid-state earphones yet. But if you're curious about how a brand new driver technology sounds, you can buy the Ace or Ace 2 today. I wouldn't, but you might. I wouldn't buy these, I don't think. I don't know.
I mean, at least the cost outlay is not outrageous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Creative already has, perfectly decent wireless earphones. So assuming that the technology hasn't wildly changed there, I think they should work perfectly reasonably. Yeah, this is going to be a thing of interest. And then, we had heard about when we were talking about the MEMS technology before. That's micro electromechanical systems,
right.
Manufactured very similarly to a silicon chip. So there's no magnets, but there are these, in this case with these xMEMS audio drivers, there's like tiny little fins on these silicon chips, and when an electrical current is applied directly to that silicon chip, they vibrate in response to the voltage of that electrical signal. So that is how the movement is created. There's another brand out there that's already talking about bringing out a true solid-state earphone where the entire frequency range is done by these xMEMS chips instead of having any sort of dynamic drivers. So those were going to be priced at like $1,500 though. So very clearly, when you're trying to get these to produce bass in enough SPL to be usable, you're going to have to put a whole bunch of those little solid state drivers in there to make that happen. So these ones at $120, $150, or $130, $150, you could sort of take a flyer on that and just see how they sound.
Yeah.
Let us know if you do, because we're not really planning to.
No. As a side note here, real quick, I did talk about the Earphone Free Pro 3 and whatever, the headphones, ANC headphones. And I did mention when we talked about them on this podcast that this company seems to take any criticism of their headphones very seriously and tries to adjust based on it. And they had done that with their previous headphones versus these. They had made many adjustments. In my review, I said, and I think it was like a throwaway line, really. I was like, the ANC isn't great, but it's fine. Mm-hmm. And the only response I got back from them from my review was, thanks for the review. I'll send your comments about the ANC back to our engineers. I was like, what did they say? I don't even remember what I wrote. You know what I mean? So like a week or two later, I get an email from them. It's like, please update your headphones. We made some changes to the ANC, and there's an update. And if you could cover it, that'd be great. If not, we understand. So I did update the review on AV Gadgets. They now have they've added there's the default and there's 3 other ear canal specific ANC profiles.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it just says 1, 2, 3. I mean, that's it's all it says, because I don't know what my ear canal looks like. You don't know what yours look like either. So it's a trial and error thing. And the thing is when you click on one, the ANC switches off and then switches back on. Mm-hmm. So momentarily. So you can actually hear the difference between on and off as you switch between the different ones. And there is a definitive difference, at least in mine, from how good some of these profiles work versus the others. Mm-hmm. So whatever they did, it's not just a here, press a button. Nothing. Yeah, it's not just a Pavlovian or Skinnerian, press a button, here's a placebo effect for you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's an actual thing they did. So if you were thinking about getting those headphones, they are continuing to improve them, which is insane to me that they would read that review. And I'm sure it's not just because of mine. I'm sure other people said the same thing, and they were like, oh, we better do something about this.
What was the name of those again? The ones you're talking about?
They are the, I can put a link there too, but the Earphone Free Pro 3.
Okay.
And it's on AV Gadgets. You'll find it. All right. More in the news. So no sooner had the SAG-AFTRA strike ended and David Zaslav over at Warner Brothers Discovery decided to fully shelve another nearly completed movie. Man, he is just the best. I mean, I just love that guy.
He was like, wait a second, all of us producers and studio heads are getting lumped together as the villain. I must stand out from the rest.
Listen, if you're going to be bad, be the best at it. That's what he said. He's like, I heard that guy over at whatever video game company it is terrible. I can be worse than him. Anyways, there's an update and a twist to the story. Warner's Coyote versus Acme has been in production, which is, of course, the cartoon.
Yes,
right?
Wile E. Coyote from Looney Tunes.
Has been in production for almost 3 years already with a budget of around $70 million. It's an animated live-action crossover starring John Cena and produced by James Gunn, who now heads up the entire DC movie division. Just the best. And for whatever reason, David Zaslav decided he'd rather completely shelve this Looney Tunes movie, never letting it see the light of day or be viewed by anyone, all for a $30 million tax write-off.
And it all seemed to have to do with lining up with quarterly reports. He wanted to be able to say, show this bottom line in this particular quarter. And so this was one way to do it. Take this movie, shelve it, never see it, let it see the light of day, take the tax write-off. And in this particular quarter, you can proclaim that you've, gained this much on your bottom line.
When he took over, and I was like not thrilled by that, and I made some comments about it. I didn't know how bad he was going to be.
Yeah.
But just really exceeded expectations there.
I mean, if ever there was something that seemed like short-term thinking.
Yes. Well, it doesn't. I tell you what, you don't have to be smart, apparently, to be a CEO. But after a huge outcry from everyone involved in making the movie and the public, once the news got out, it seems Warner Brothers Discovery has done a partial about-face saying they're willing to let the movie be shopped to other distributors. So we very well might see a Looney Tunes release, but not from Warner Brothers, and potentially going straight to streaming. But unlike Batgirl, at least we might actually be able to see it someday, and everyone who worked on it won't have all of their effort hidden away forever and ever. Okay. First of all, this guy's an absolute jerk. Let's just get that out of the way. He's a jerk, and it's not like this doesn't happen, right? There's movies that have been made and shelved away.
Absolutely, and even more so TV shows. There's a gazillion TV pilots out there that have never been seen by anybody. Oodles and oodles and oodles.
Pilots, and maybe even the first couple of episodes were shot before they just like nope, and that has happened over and over and over and over again. So let's pump the hate brakes a little bit on David Zaslav for that. The fact that he does it so on such a grand scale, rather than it's just like it just shows not only that he's
and that people who were that day continuing working on it only found out about it because of like Twitter.
Yeah. So it just shows a lot. It shows a lot of things about him, but one of the things I think it shows is the fact that he can't understand how math works, because instead of doing like 5 or like 10 or 20 or 30 smaller projects that they've got in, like just get rid of all these smaller ones that we don't even know if they're going to do anything, but we'll save money that way. He's like, no, we need to get $30 million, so find a $30 million one and kill that. You're just like, what?
Like this movie has already been screen tested. Already had the group reviews going in on it, testing really, really well, really, really highly.
I thought the Batgirl movie too also was testing pretty well.
Yeah, but I mean, you got John Cena, definitely a recognizable star in this movie, in live action, not just doing a voice. James Gunn is like, you want to start burning bridges with the guy who's running your entire DC division, and then apparently, like this is a little bit of rumor, but I mean there were quite literally writers and producers who were saying, like, now that everything is churning back up, we're going to get all these shows back into production, all these movies back into production. There were multiple of them who were like, I just canceled my meetings with Warner Brothers. Like, I'm not even going to bother talking to them. I'm going to try and proceed with my project with any other studio besides them. I'm like, oh, okay, good. There's some consequences to this, some long-term rather than short-term consequences. And, who knows, maybe eventually all the investors who actually control the board over at Warner Brothers will be like, some decisions are being made here that might have bad consequences for this studio.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that needs to change. And this seems like a minor thing compared to like some of the major things, but it also seems like it's something that's pretty easy to fix. Just fire that dude. Get rid of him. Comments from our listeners. Casey just wanted to share his recent SVS customer service experience. Over 5 years ago, he bought a PC2000 cylinder sub, no Pro model at that time. Given its age, it is officially out of warranty at this point. Well, out of nowhere, it just stopped working, and since it isn't the current model anymore, he wasn't sure if he'd be able to get any replacement parts, so he was mentally preparing himself to buy a whole new sub. But he had heard, mostly from us, but also from online, that it's always worth giving SVS a call. and he's certainly glad that he did. They had him perform a few simple troubleshooting checks that helped him determine whether it was the amp, the driver, or both that were having problems, and that, without him even asking, they said they'd send him a replacement amplifier, no charge, and it arrived in 2 days with clear instructions on how to replace it, and voila, his PC2000 is working perfectly again. He couldn't believe it. Being out of warranty, figured he'd have to...
There was some sort of loud noise out there.
Jeez, this,
I don't know.
I swear, this podcast is cursed.
It is. This
it
is a bad
cursed
day on a technical level. My mic also.
I've
seems
locked
to be
all the doors so my
place.
family can't get in today. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
They're going to have to like break a window to get in here because I've locked all the doors. He couldn't believe it. Being out of warranty, he figured he had to at least pay for the replacement amp, even if the part was even still available. But SVS went above and beyond, and now he's a customer for life as far as he's concerned. So there you go.
Yes, that is above and beyond. I also fully, I will continue to repeat every time this comes up. I'm super happy that SVS does this and seemingly quite on the regular, but I will never, ever, ever blame a company for actually just living up to their warranty and nothing more than that. That is perfectly fair. That is perfectly reasonable, but it is super nice that SVS is like...
David Zaslav could learn a couple of things from Gary Akubian. That's for sure.
Short term versus long term.
You know what? I don't want to see Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos fight in the cage match. I want to see the SVS guys take on the Warner Brother guys and gals, both on both sides. Like get them all in there and just be like, let's see who could be the best person. And like Warner Brothers, like we're out. We're sorry.
Right.
We don't know how to do that. Questions. Infinite Gary was on the list last week with multiple questions, and Rob said he'd hold those off until this week. In the meantime, Gary sent in more questions, but they're not time sensitive and largely prompts for open-ended discussion, so we're going to get a bunch of those questions first.
Other questions first.
A bunch of other questions first, and then move to Gary's questions a bit down the list. Might not even get to all of his this week, or maybe
probably not at the rate we're going. So yeah. But a lot of these should be fairly quick answers. So let's keep in mind we do have these open-ended topics, and we don't have to stretch any of these. So we'll try and do straightforward answers this week. Let's see what happens.
Jeff in Perth, Australia. Jeff is hoping we can offer suggestions for some active noise-canceling earbuds. Just talked about some. Mm-hmm. He would actually prefer they be wired, as Tom well knows. Flights from Perth to anywhere take a long time. So he's even open to the idea of getting earbuds that just offer excellent noise isolation rather than active noise canceling. And as long as it would be truly effective, on a long flight, wearing full-sized over-the-ear ANC headphones for that long gets uncomfortably hot. And so you really prefer in-ears that can use the comply foam tips. And while there are quite a few wireless options on the market, the battery life is pretty much always a problem, as the buds themselves won't last long enough without being recharged in their case at some point. On top of all of this, he's looking to keep the price down. He's found wired ANC earbuds from options from Koss and Phaeton, which I have reviewed Phaeton a while back on Amazon Australia, but the reviews are pretty mixed for those. So is there something that we can recommend that to him that checks all the boxes? I just want to say I don't agree that you should get in-ear earbuds, even wired ones. And the reason is because the lack of comfort is gonna just be different. you're not getting away from it. Like, the over ear ones get hot. Yeah, that's true. I'm not gonna disagree with that. They do, and you get sweaty underneath there.
And it's pretty rare to find active noise canceling over ears that aren't sealed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know how you do that.
Need to be, yeah.
I'm gonna have to go look to see what I know. I've got a pair of over-ear headphones up there that are great sounding. They last a long time and everything. I did a review of them. I just can't remember the name of them right now. I think their monoprice might be wrong. I'm gonna go check while Rob is talking in just a second. But I just want to say, as the ones I just talked about, the Earfun Air Free or whatever, Free Air, whatever they're called. I can't remember the stupid name of those things. They do have, and you see the picture, but I don't think I talked about it in the review. You see it in the picture. They look like the normal rubber tips, but they have one set that are in there that have like the foam on the inside of the rubber
compressible
tips.
foam.
Yeah. So those, even though they might not last as long as you want them to last, those might be a good option, and they are cheap. At least over here in the States, I think they're like $70. I think they're on sale for like $50. I think there was a code in that review that you can check out. But let me go look at these over-ear ones that I've got because I think that those might work too.
Okay, so I mean, I do have a recommendation, although it's not going to literally check all the boxes that were just mentioned. I'm going to suggest Anker's Soundcore Space A40s. Now, these are wireless. They do have a battery. They do need to be recharged. They are not wired. It's kind of tricky to find active noise canceling headphones or earphones that are not wireless, simply because anything that's active noise canceling by its nature is going to have to draw power. It's going to have a battery in it. So when they do that, they're like, well, we might as well make them wireless as well, because that's pretty much what everyone wants. So the Anker Soundcore Space A40s. One reason that I would sort of like these, they're not super expensive. They're available directly in Australia for 117 Australian dollars, which is a pretty low price for fully wireless with active noise cancelling. But the thing here is that they have the longest battery life out of any of Anker's available wireless earphones. They say 10 hours just on the earbuds themselves, and then you can charge them 4 times from the case. Giving them 50 hours total is how they sort of describe it. In real-world testing, they genuinely do run for a good at least 7.5 hours. 8 hours is pretty common if you don't have the volume cranked way up. They'll actually last that long without getting recharged. Now, on fully across the Pacific Ocean flights that still might not be long enough, but these are at a price point that's low enough that I could easily consider getting 2 pairs of them. You could bring 1 charging case and 2 pairs of the headphones themselves, so 1 pair of them is in the case charging while you're using the others, and then you just swap them when the battery dies after about 8 hours. I definitely think you could get across the whole flight with minimal interruption doing it that way without totally breaking the bank. I mean, we're less than $250 here, and I think that's a not unreasonable solution to this that checks all the other boxes that you were talking about. So yeah, that would be my solution there.
You said the Space A40s?
Yeah, Space A40s, yeah.
So it's funny because this is those headphones came out and they sent those to me along with the headphones I'm going to recommend, which are the Q45s. Okay. So the review it's one review. You can go to AV Gadgets. I'll link it up here. The A40s and the Q45s are in the same review because they came out at the same time and they sent them to me at the same time. I agree with Rob. Those are good. I would have no problems recommending those. The Q45s are the over-ear ones that I reviewed at the same time, which I think that they sound phenomenal. They're very, very good. I don't remember how long the runtime is on that, but I will look that up in just a second.
Well, heck, maybe you get both of them, because maybe you can put on the full-sized earphones for a time while the A40s are charging for a bit, and then you can swap back. And you're still not going to break the bank getting both of those. Yeah. So that could be a fun little solution there.
So the playtime with the Space Q40s is with ANC on is 50 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay. That should do it.
They'll last plenty long. And with you got the AC off, it's 65 hours. And like Rob said, I mean, I would agree with that. The earphones I was talking about, the Free Pro, whatever what are they called? Earphone Free Pro 3. I mean, it is I don't understand why it has to be why that has to be the name.
A tongue twister on top of it, all the rest.
It's 7.5 hours. Okay. But you get 2 hours of runtime with a 10-minute charge. So you can, throw them in the case, go to the bathroom, talk to your kids for a second, and then you get 2 hours back on those things. So, I agree with any or all of these suggestions. There's no problem with any of these. So check those out.
Yeah, so we didn't actually go to a wired solution, but given the price points and given the sort of battery life and the fact that we think it's not unreasonable in this instance to maybe get 2 of them, a couple of different ones. Because, I mean, look, sometimes when I'm wearing in-ears, I'm like, I want to give the inside of my ear a bit of a rest now, and I wouldn't mind putting full over-ear headphones. And then I agree with you. At some point, those get hot, take those off. But in the meantime, the other ones have charged up. So I think that's a reasonable solution for an airplane flight.
I'll tell you what, I'll take being hot in over-ear headphones over having in-ear headphones most of the time. I just the in-ear stuff bothers me after. It doesn't take 2 hours to bother me.
Okay.
But, other people can be different. Jay had wanted to wait until his theater room was mostly ready and looking pretty, but he knows we find it helpful when we see the room he's dealing with for a potential purchasing decision, so he sent some pictures. I don't know if Rob's going to share these because they are messy.
I mean, nobody should mind. We've all been there.
We have all been there.
This room is still under construction, so it makes sense that there's stuff piled up in the middle while he's doing all that.
Yeah. I'm in that same boat. The room is 12 by 23 by 8, and an enclosed rectangle of them there being soffits on the ceiling. He has followed the soundproofing steps for construction using double drywall with green glue and decoupled framing. It's a proper dedicated theater room. He already owns one SVS PB3000 sub, which should be fine in here, and he's wondering what he should get as a second subwoofer to pair with it. The PB3000 will go in the front right corner, and the second sub can go in the rear left. He's in Canada, so prices on all of the most popular subwoofer models that we talk about are higher or require being imported. For example, the PB2000 Pro or the PC2000 Pro cylinder would be $1,750 Canadian versus $1,100 US. And getting a second PB3000 would be $2,600 Canadian. He came across an open box deal on a PB3000, but it's still $2,400 Canadian. Should he pounce? Would it be worth it? Is it important to perfectly match the PB3000 he already has? Or could he spend less without giving up any performance? It's 23 by 12 by 8. I don't see why you need a 3000 to begin with.
That's right. That's right where I am.
If it were me, I'd get 2 cylinders and sell your current PB3000 and save the floor space, but
that's not out of the question either. Look, if you just came to me and said, I've got an enclosed rectangle of a room, 12 by 23 by 8, I want to leave no performance on the table. I want to make sure I get everything right down to 20 hertz as much as I could possibly want. I would point you to something very much akin to a PB2000 Pro or a Monoprice Monolith M12 V2 or the brand new Rhythmic Speedwoofer 12S, all of which are like the 500 watt to 600 watt amplifier with a very powerful 12-inch driver in a pretty darn big box that isn't quite as big as your PB3000, but closer to that than a compact sub for sure. So very much in that realm of subwoofer, all of which in US dollars are going to be between $800 to $1,100. A pair of that class of subwoofer is exactly what I would point you to for your enclosed room size. If you get a subwoofer that's more powerful than any of those, there's no downside to the performance. It's not like it's going to sound worse other than if it's so physically large that you can't optimally place it anymore. But there's also going to be a bunch of headroom that you just simply never make use of. That's what it's going to be. It's not a downside, but it's a slight bit of a waste, you could say. So in your situation, like, I'm not going to demand that you get rid of your PB3000 for performance reasons or anything. It would purely be a financial if you were to do that. But if you take your PB3000 that you already have, put it in this particular room, pair that up with one of the ones that I just mentioned, like a PB2000 Pro, which is readily available in Canada, that's going to be fantastic performance. There's going to be no downside. You're not leaving any performance on the table doing that. They're going to work wonderfully together. The PB3000 could go even louder if you just cranked it up, but you're never going to realistically need that extra performance. So given where the price points are, right? Like if you said, I found an open box PB3000, it's $1,500 versus if I bought a new PB2000 Pro, it would be $1,750. Is there any reason to not save the $250 and be like, no, go grab that $1,500 PB3000. It's going to be fantastic. But given that it's still going to be $2,400, like that's significantly more money than $1,750. So I would still point you at getting a PB2000 Pro or a PC2000 Pro cylinder in this case to go at the back of your room. And that final answer.
Yeah. I'll put a couple links in there about headroom and buying an overly large sub for your space. I see it all the time. I see people all the time talking about getting, I'm going to upgrade my sub, and I'm just like, why? Are you missing something? Is it, they've got
all perfectly reasonable. You're like, this is the one I have. Should I make sure it's identical to the other one that I get? So that all makes sense.
Oh no, I'm not talking about him. Jay is being perfectly reasonable here, I think. But I mean, I know that seems like a pretty large space, but I mean, you will appreciate not, having a cylinder and having that smaller footprint, I think, more than you realize. That space gets sucked up pretty fast. Bill has an LG C2 OLED. While he was watching The Mandalorian, he noticed the issue where, even though it was a prolonged dark scene at the time, the whole image dimmed down even further and got stuck there, barely visible. Bringing up the TV's user menu and then exiting brought the image back to its proper light levels. After a bit of research, he found Vincent Tio's explanation. He could have found it here too. We've talked about that before. And he was sure he had just witnessed the TPC, or temporal peak luminance control, that you can only deactivate by venturing into the service menu. The regular auto dimming controls that you can access in the user menu don't have any effect on this particular issue.
Yeah.
But since he was still within his warranty period, he didn't want to risk voiding the warranty by entering the service menu and making changes himself, so he left it alone, only to find that, more recently, this dimming during dark scenes doesn't seem to happen anymore. He wasn't able to recreate the problem while watching that same scene from The Mandalorian. More research allowed him to find the update saying that LG had issued a firmware update a few months ago that greatly reduced the aggressiveness of the automatic static brightness limiter. They have a lot of names for this thing.
They do.
And it certainly seems to have mostly fixed the issue, at least in his case. But supposedly, there's still a bit of TPC still active, and the GSR, Global Sticky Reduction, there's just too many of these.
Real name.
I don't know.
So silly.
Is still present and set to on in the service menu. So if there's a static logo or heads-up display in a video game, the image on the C2 OLED might still dim, even if the scene as a whole isn't all that bright. Is this actually the case? And if so, should he proceed with getting the replacement LG remote so he can access service menu and manually turn the TPC and GSR off? Are you asking us if the thing that you're not experiencing is something you should try to prevent from happening? Because if it were me, I'd be honest with you, if it were me, even though I feel perfectly comfortable going into service menus, I've done it before. I've done it by weird button presses on your where you have to count the number of times that you've pressed a button, and if you lose count, you are SCREWED. So it is bad. It can be very, very, very bad. So I'm perfectly content to go into service menus like that. This little remote thing doesn't bother me at all. I want to do it. I just want to do it, especially if it's not something that's if it was happening all the time, I would definitely do it. If it happened once a week, I don't know. Maybe I would probably do it for once a week. But anything less than that, I'd be like, I'll just hit the menu button and call it good.
I see. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the way that TPC, that temporal peak luminance control, used to function, I mean, I would go as far as to say it was a problem. Like when it happened, it was just bad. It was a bad experience. Things became utterly invisible on the screen, and they absolutely weren't supposed to be. And so, I mean, that was just a really poor implementation of what they did there. The firmware update that they released now makes the C2 and the C1, and I think even going all the way back to the CX, work essentially identically to the way the C3, the current 2023 model year, works, where in the C3 and the G3, they removed the options even in the service menu to control those things, but thankfully redid how aggressive that is and the way that it functions so that in the vast majority of scenarios, you don't end up with this really very obvious over-darkening of the image to the point that it's completely inaccurate, not at all the way it's supposed to look, and a genuine problem. So they've really, really improved it. On the technical side, yes, there is still some amount of temporal peak luminance control that is still active. It's now something that I would say makes sense, which is that if you have a prolonged mid to bright scene over the majority of the image, it will dim down. If you put a camera on it and record it and compared, several minutes later versus originally, it does dim down. That is a fairly reasonable thing to do, in my opinion, to avoid the chances of image retention or burn-in on an OLED screen, and it's not anywhere like where it was dim scenes that went to invisible. It's not doing it in the super dim scenes anymore, which is where it was honestly a problem. And then the global sticky reduction is still it is still active. That is true. I can confirm. And still somewhat noticeable if you do have a CNN logo that's up on your screen. If you do have, a heads up display on your video game, it does dim the image after a fairly prolonged amount of time at this point. But of course, if you're doing a fairly long gaming session or leaving something on the news, it will be there. Again, when it is going to be a case of like it's the news ticker or the channel station logo that's causing it to do it, I would kind of want to leave that on. I know the image gets a bit dimmer than you want it to be, but I do think that's a pretty good safety precaution to have there. It doesn't make it unwatchable. It just makes it dimmer than when you first tune to that channel. Similarly for video games, I'm like, I can see it. I think even more so is if you're getting, say, like the 42-inch to use as a computer monitor, and then it's fairly noticeable when you have your, static windows that are up there and you're leaving them on there, and then the whole screen dims down because you've got, something up in the corner that's a fairly bright thing and it dims the whole image, and some people really prefer to turn that off. So there's specific scenarios where I'm glad that there is still a way to manually purchase the service menu remote, which is like $11, so that's not going to break the bank, and readily available on Amazon. And then going in there is not nearly as tricky as like the scenario that Tom described where you got to count button clicks. It's like, no, it's a fairly obvious menu, and if all you do is stick to TPC and GSR and you don't touch anything else while you're in there, the chances of doing any damage are very, 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 very low. So if you've got one of those specific scenarios, you're using a 42-inch as a computer monitor and it bothers you that it dims down, you are playing video games and you notice it and it bothers you, then I would do it. Otherwise, if you're primarily watching TV shows and movies, I would not touch it. It works really well now, and it's not going to give you the invisible dark scenes like it used to.
The only thing I will say about this aftermarket service menu remote thing is, if you are going to buy something like that, just as a general best practices, take the batteries out when you're not using it.
Yep.
Just
because you're not going to use it very often.
Yeah, you should only use it the once, and then you never need it again. Basically, unless there's an update that resets it or something. That's right. Yeah. But the thing is as the batteries die, you can get erroneous signals sent out from remotes, and it's not common, and but it does happen, and that's certainly not the remote you want it to happen from.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
So just leave the batteries out of it unless you are actively using it. That's the only thing I'll say if you decide to go this route. Karl, we previously talked about Zapedi going out of business, and then a brand new name, Arvolution, popping up with what we strongly appears to be the rebadged Zapedi player and their NAS with automatic disk ripping from the same company has taken over all warranty coverage from Zapedi customers. For those of you who don't remember, last week or the week before when we talked about it. Well, now their online store is open, and the Arvolution Player 1 is available for $900. It wasn't clear from Karl's email whether he had heard all about where Arvolution came from and he was being sarcastic, or if he was generally kind of excited about this new media player that supports Dolby Vision and HDR10 with their R video software that looks quite slick and supports playback directly from the Blu-ray folder or ISO files. So just in case he was genuinely in his interest, shall we offer our thoughts on Arvolution and their $900 Player 1 media player? I don't care.
And I care enough to say I don't do it. don't get it. Which I don't know. Some people might be upset at me for saying that, but I wouldn't trust this thing with a 10-foot pole. Nope. And there are other solutions out there. Which what? I
want someone to buy it and see if the logo comes off with like the back of their thumb.
Zapedi is still under there. It's literally a sticker. I don't think it quite is. It doesn't look that way from the images, but who knows? I haven't held one in person, and I don't intend to. So if this is actually a case where like you saw the promotion and were thinking this was a new thing with all of these features, and this what I will say is a pretty nice looking interface, at least from the images that they show on their website. Like if you were not aware of all the history of Zapedi and the rebranding of this and the shutting down and bankrupting of Zapedi that led to all of it, like if you were unaware of all of that and you're just like, hey, Revolution has come along, this looks kind of interesting, should I get it? I'm like, no. that's my advice to you. No, I would not do it. I can't say I'm like over the moon about Zadu, because who knows if they're gonna last either. Any of these things that are basically there to play content that had to, at the very least, break the DMCA to exist, or highly likely playing pirated content. Like any of the players where that's largely what they're about, I wouldn't count on them being around for decades to come. None of them are gigantic companies, and if some legal body ever gets a hold of them, that's usually pretty quickly the end of them. So, I mean, Zadu is out there right now. Dune is out there right now. They've been around for a while, but who knows if they're actually going to continue on forever. But that all being said, I still wouldn't go for Revolution, and not at $900, that's for sure. That's a plenty of money to spend to play your backed up discs when there are other ways that aren't quite obviously rebadged the PD players.
Julian has a Marantz SR8015 receiver for his front, left, center, and right channels, as well as surrounds. He uses it as a pre-pro with an external Parasound Halo A51 amp powering those speakers. His front right channel started randomly dropping out. It isn't all the time, and it will randomly start working again as well, and the receiver never goes into protection mode. He's in the favorite, but his troubleshooting is quite certain it's the Marantz's receiver's pre-out that's causing the problem. For example, if he swaps the RCA cables, it's always whatever amp channel and speaker that are connected to the receiver's front right pre-out that stops working. He didn't say if he tried the Marantz's own built-in amplifier, though. He has an AC Infinity fan on top of his Marantz to help with cooling, and he admits that, about 3 years into owning the SR8015, he's never given it a thorough cleaning or taking off its top, as has everybody else. No one does that. You act like that's a thing that people do. They do not. Do we think he should attempt this first? Is there anything about using a vacuum on it or taking off the top cover that could potentially damage something? And basically, what's the best way to get all of his channels working properly again? Buy another receiver if you want to use it as a pre-pro, because I don't think this is going to help it. No, to answer the question as wrote, do I think you should do this? I don't think you necessarily need to. I think that a little compressed air blown through like the air vents to kind of dust everything off would be my first step without having to take anything off or unplug anything.
Sure.
That would be my first step. If you still wanted to do this, could you take a vacuum cleaner and vacuum it out? The answer is yes. I mean, you take the top off, it's usually like 8 screws or something like that. Tops come off pretty easily. You're not really risking damaging anything. Be careful which screws you take out, because some of the screws hold boards onto, or like connections onto the back.
They can anyway.
And if you disconnect it, then the things start falling on the inside, and you don't want that. I would be a little careful. You just be worried about static electricity, stuff like that. You don't want to, send any voltage through unwanted parts, but just with a little brush, or like a combination of the compressed air and the vacuum cleaner on the other side, you could do something like that. Do I think this will help? I absolutely do not.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't think it will. It maybe. But if it was, I mean, it's going at the pre-outs. It's not the amplified section. That's the thing that gets me.
Yeah, given that this is such a specific and, somewhat random in that it's not like repeatable to the point that you can go, okay, I do exactly these steps and it cuts out every time, and then I do exactly these steps and it comes back every time, but repeatable in the sense that it's always this one preamplifier output that is having the issue and problem going along with it. I would, in this instance, probably suggest that you just contact Marantz customer service. I would go so far as to warn you away from actually removing the top cover, unscrewing and removing the top cover. That isn't usually a problem as far as any sort of warranty claims go with Marantz, just that simple part of it. But any sort of disassembly is going to be something that in the manual it says, okay, if you disassemble this item, then technically you don't have the warranty coverage on it anymore. So the compressed air should be absolutely fine to just blow that, not with the really tiny little nozzle that can cause the air temperature to drop really, really low, but just the basic regular nozzle that's on there, not the extension nozzle. And just blowing some through there is normal, and seeing that helps. But I kind of agree with Tom. I think this is probably some sort of actual electrical fault or defect with that particular preamp out channel. If that's all it is, and it's just isolated that one channel, my suspicion would be that this is not going to be a extremely difficult repair to have done. That said, we never know. It could be something in the entire circuit board, and that's the real cause of the issue, which would be a whole, much more expensive and lengthy repair. But if it really is just some sort of connection trace or the jack itself, which is the most likely thing, that preamplifier jack, that's a pretty simple repair. So I would say first and foremost, get in contact with Marant's customer support. As we've heard, maybe expect to wait a week or two to hear anything back from them, because they don't seem to be super speedy, but they do eventually come back and seem to be professional and courteous once you're actually finally in touch with them. And I would go that route in this case. That sounds the most likely thing to me.
Rob, not this Rob, a different Rob. Rob, until now, he has always lived in apartments and has never been able to dedicate an entire enclosed room to a home theater, but he now finally has a house.
Congratulations!
It's a big deal, man. That said, the one room that was available to be turned into a dedicated theater currently has 2 openings. One is a sliding, hollow, wooden pocket door that leads to the kitchen. I'm sorry for your loss. And the other is just a 60 by 80 inch opening that goes into a hallway. He doesn't see any reason he can't add a set of French doors to close off that 60 by 80 inch opening. For aesthetic reasons, he preferred the type with frosted glass, but replacing you got some vibrations going on, my man. Replacing the sliding pocket door into the kitchen might be a bit of a challenge. So he wants to know, how sealed is a sealed room anyway? He really wants to experience this full base pressurization he's only ever heard about. But what will he need in order to make that happen in this case? So the French doors will make the difference here. That's the big opening that you're going to be worried about.
Sure.
The next thing you'll be doing for probably the rest of your life is chasing down rattles in this place.
Seems highly likely with that, both with the kitchen sliding door, because I know those types of doors, and
yes,
that's going to rattle.
It's going to rattle like crazy.
If it didn't rattle, I would be genuinely surprised. And then the French doors, I mean, as long as they're well constructed, if you get the really cheap ones where on your own it's very easy to rattle the glass insert, don't go for those. Spend a bit more money, get the ones that are nice and solid and properly constructed. But there's no reason that can't work. There's absolutely no reason that a nice set of French doors can't work.
But even if, like I said, even if you get the cheap French doors and you don't do anything with the sliding, with the pocket door, you will have an enclosed space. As far as the sound is concerned, that it will be enclosed. So you will experience that bass. You won't be able to hear much of it over the sound of everything rattling in the room, but it will exist. So that will be fun. That will be a fun moment for you. But then you will want to start chasing down all the rattles, and that pocket door is really going to be the issue. I think Rob's right. Spending a little bit more on the French doors. First of all, don't ever get the cheapest thing. When was the last time you walked into a restaurant and just I know it's a sushi place, but do you have old sushi that's a little bit less expensive than the new stuff? Can I just have the fish you were gonna throw away and you give it to me for half price? Because that's what buying cheap stuff for your house is like. You're just you're gonna suffer with it for the rest, literally the rest of your life, and the rest of your life with this house. So get some decent doors, have them properly installed. That is important.
Yeah, it's worth the money there. If you aren't already someone who's well experienced and knows exactly what you're doing hanging doors, it is worth hiring someone who does.
And then also make sure that there's a way to secure them closed, because a lot of times they have a slider that'll slide into the ceiling or the door frame or to the ground, or
the little flip latch that goes into the extra
latch
thing at the top there.
What happens there is, with the cheaper stuff or with the stuff that's not as properly installed, when it goes in there, there's a bit of tolerance, right? You want to be able to slide it in easier and do it fairly easily. What you want is what makes that door solid and not move anymore. Okay, so because if you're going to add this French door to this room, which is I think a great idea, and I don't think the glass is a deal breaker at all, honestly.
Nope.
I don't think that's a big deal.
I mean, this is stuff that is, as long as you can see a demo of it at the store, which you usually can at the large hardware stores. This is not super difficult to determine at the store.
Yeah.
You can tell the ones that are cheap, and it's you just put your hand on the glass insert, and some of them it wiggles, and it's okay, not that one, right? You're gonna get the one where it's everything feels nice and solid, everything fits together really
tightly,
tightly. Everything is, the well-machined, well-manufactured, tight tolerances, solid feel to it. That's not difficult to determine, even if you know nothing about it.
You're going to be fighting with this. You're going to be fighting rattles anyways. Whenever you first pressurize a room, that's like the first thing that you end up doing is figuring out all the things that are vibrating.
Yep.
But on top of that, you've got this pocket door that you're going to be dealing with. So what you don't want to do is add another thing that's going to rattle. So I don't know. I mean, Rob and I are not French door experts. So, but you are going to have to become a little bit of one by doing some research and figuring out exactly how it is that you can get a door that when it's closed, it becomes as immobile as possible so that it's not rattling around in there. What you don't want to have to do is basically have to figure out some way of putting foam into the frame or whatever, so that when you're closing it, you actually have to pull it a little extra tightly so that you can secure it down. You can secure the
well, that would be like getting an exterior grade one, right? With full weather stripping and all that. Yeah. Which I would say the one other concern I have here, anytime you've got a room where it was designed architecturally with a permanent opening, we do have to care a little bit about airflow, ventilation, HVAC, because likelihood is there's probably a register in this room, but maybe the air return is in the hallway. That would be what I would expect in a case like this. So the path for air to get out of this room is almost certainly going to be under the doorway, and most likely back into the hallway, also under the door into the kitchen. But you want to keep in mind some of that. If this is going to be okay, I'm going to have the doors closed for 2 hours while I'm watching a movie and then I open them back up, that's not going to be any sort of somebody's going to suffocate in this room. Nothing like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't fully weather strip seal right down to the floor this type of scenario. You were saying, how sealed is a sealed room? Well, yes, there are levels, right? There's the literally airtight room, and we're not going to go for that in this scenario. But just like we've talked about with, just take your regular bedroom door, a hollow core bedroom door with a gap underneath it, you close that door, it's still quieter on the other side than when the door is wide open, right? So that's an easy explanation of, yes, you're still doing something very much worthwhile by installing the French doors, but we're not going to go literally airtight in here because we do want that ventilation to still have a path in and out of this room. So, yeah, I think it's going to be fairly standard, fairly easy to determine at the store with the French doors. As far as the pocket door for the kitchen, maybe you try things the way they are, because I'm thinking he probably just bought this house, money's tight, I get all of that.
Right,
so you're almost certainly, I would be surprised, like I say, to not notice a rattle there. It's going to be a little bit more involved than just getting a solid core, heavier pocket door and replacing the hollow one, because very often the sliding mechanism has a weight limit that it was designed for, and going for a much more solid sliding door might not work with whatever the sliding hardware is in there. So that's one where, again, if you aren't already a handyman and an expert in doing this, it's worth your time and money to hire an actual expert on that. Have them come in, examine the pocket door that you have, say, look, what I want is a door that I can close and it's not going to rattle. Those exist. There are good sliding doors that aren't going to rattle in this scenario. They're going to cost more money. They're going to be heavier. That's unquestionable. But hire the expert to guide you in that one. When you have the money to do it, you go ahead and do it, and it'll be worth it. You'll enjoy the experience.
Yeah, I agree. Until then, you can maybe try to deaden a little bit, but you're really going to, and you're going to run up against the limitations of, like Rob said, the sliding mechanism more than anything. I mean, the door will vibrate back and forth. You can stop that fairly easily just by wedging it together.
Can do it, yeah.
Even if you didn't want to do the rubber tape thing, which is what I would probably do for the long run, is it you're like, oh, we're going to watch a movie, slide the door closed and then shove a towel in between the door and the frame, and it'll just wedge it against the wall, and it won't vibrate as much. But then you still have to worry about the sliding mechanism and all the things that can rattle up there. Monty says, thanks for discussing this acoustic panel and air gap thickness question last week, and for pointing him to acousticmodeling.com. It was helpful. Now that he knows how thick he wants to make his panels, what's our recommendation for the fabric to wrap them in? He'd like good quality at a reasonable price. So there's lots of them out there. Gix sells them. Other places do. You can go to your local fabric place and just buy fabric that fits your needs, and the way to know whether or not it's acoustically transparent is to put it up to your stupid face and blow air through it. If you put it to your lips and you blow and the fabric doesn't bubble, You know what I mean? As the air's coming through, or it doesn't significantly blow. I mean, it's gonna move a little bit. It is acoustically transparent, and that's all.
I do also like the easy suggestion, which is just we do all bring our phones with us everywhere right now. You've probably got some music, or you can bring up YouTube while you're in the store. So you literally just play something on a speaker, put it on the other side of the fabric. Some of them are going to muffle it a bit, some of them don't. Now you know which
literally
ones are
wrap your phone in the fabric.
That's
just wrap it around there and just see what it sounds like.
So that is a very easy test at any store. But if you just want to go online, have a selection of ones that are already acoustically transparent, and B, fire rated, because that is important. You do want fire rated fabric for this stuff that's going to be hanging on your walls on a semi-permanent basis. So the easy solution that I like to point people to, because the price is reasonable and all of the fabrics are nice, is Acoustimac. Acoustimac has their own DIY. Just buy it by the linear yard. Do take note of the width of the bolts, right?
Yes.
Because the linear yard that you're buying is going to be at that width of the bolt, and there are different widths depending on the fabric you're getting. So do make a note of that, at least, to make sure that you're going to get the proper coverage over your panels. But what I really like their regular DMD fabric is very, very nice and very affordable, with a nice wide bolt that it starts with. But then they also have their acoustically transparent and fire rated suede fabric that I really, really think looks classy when you do that. And that isn't like easy to find everywhere. So I like that they have that readily available for you to add to cart and buy it. They have their executive fabrics, and they have Guilford of Maine, which you will definitely be able to find Guilford of Maine just about anywhere, but the price is a little bit higher on that. But every color you could imagine, that suede option I think is really nice. And you can even order printed fabric from them directly. That, of course, will cost more money and be a bespoke thing. But if you just want to get image printed on fabric and wrap it yourself, they provide that service as well at a pretty reasonable price compared to everyone else. So Acoustimac is kind of a one-stop shop if you want to do it.
Henry wrote this previously after he converted his former dedicated theater room with total light control and a 120-inch projection screen, set up using a JVC NX5 projector and a Screen Innovation Zero Edge screen into more of a living space with room to work from home in that room rather than using his bedroom for work. He sold off his projection system and installed an 83-inch OLED, Sony OLED, but you really missed the screen size in the dedicated room experience. We suggest it might be worth exchanging the 83-inch OLED for one of the 98-inch or 100-inch LCDs that, remarkably, cost about the same or less. And he appreciated our thoughts, but at this point, if he's going to make another change, it's going to be a whole hog, and he's going to back to a fully dedicated theater room with full light control. So he's looking at which projector and screen he might purchase. He almost certainly will go with another JVC, but what about the screen? Screen Innovation's Zero Edge that he had before certainly looked great, but it was pretty darn expensive. It seemed to make sense given the price point of the projector. I understand that thought.
Yeah.
That,
when people are buying it first, yep.
Yeah, they have an expensive projector. You should have a expensive screen to go with it. But if he were to just go back to a projection system now, could he actually go with a much or even just moderately less expensive screen without giving up any performance? It's a bit hard to reconcile that a projector costing several thousands of dollars could have its performance maximized when using a screen that only costs a few hundred, particularly when there are screens that also cost thousands. But at the same time, if you can really save that much money on a screen, it'll make buying this new projector a whole lot easier. So what's the explanation? The explanation is that the market for projection screens is not great. It's not a big market.
Relatively small.
And for years and years, because it was niche, things were made in small batches, very, very small batches that they didn't have to, because they couldn't keep inventory, and it wasn't, a lot of times you told them what size screen you wanted, and that's what they sent you. They made it for you, basically bespoke. Now we do have companies that are like, well, we can pump these things out, and we've come up with a system that can be essentially aluminum extruded and then shaped, and then you put it together yourself, and it's a lot of the price is
the shipping too, right? The ones that come in pieces, you can ship it a lot less expensive than the ones that have to be shipped fully assembled in a crate.
And I think the question you really want answered is not about cost or about this. The real question is, what am I going to lose in performance?
Sure.
by getting one of the cheaper screens that we almost always recommend, which is a silver ticket.
And very often elite screens as well. Yeah.
Depending on which one you're going with. And a Loon Vision if you're up in Canada.
Sure.
Which is a perfectly fine solution too here in the States. It just tends to be a lot more expensive. I don't even know that I would say there would be a noticeable difference in quality over the more expensive things, as long as you're going with a flat, on the wall, not
fixed
acoustically
frame,
not acoustically
hang it on the wall, regular white screen. Yeah, I mean, ironically, the worse your room situation is, the more expensive the screen needs to be to even get it remotely, close to a really nice looking image. If you are putting in the effort to have the dedicated room fully light controlled, then you can go with quite an inexpensive white screen and have absolutely fabulous performance where you're really not leaving anything on the table. So, I mean, where there is an objective difference still can be in the frame itself. I can definitely say that some of the much more expensive screens, they do have a genuinely nicer frame, or it'll be the part where, like, no matter the width of the screen that you're going for, that long section, it'll be a single piece, which is much more expensive to ship to you, rather than, coming in two pieces that you assemble together with a slight seam that's in the middle there. But if we're talking, this is a fully dedicated room where it's completely black when the lights are off, how much you are worried about the frame that you need to put together and hang once, being a completely single piece without any seam in the middle, or, being the really, really, really high quality frame, I'm like, yeah, I can absolutely accept a less expensive frame that still looks absolutely pitch black once it's assembled and is in the dark dedicated room. And I will take one of those silver tickets or Elite or a Loon Vision all day long to save that money, because the actual white screen performance, the most important thing, you really aren't giving up anything at all. You can absolutely get one of those screens and objectively, in every measurable objective way, have fabulous performance. It's not that difficult to make a smooth, white, properly tuned screen. That can absolutely be done. So if we can set your mind at ease, I would go that way. If it lets you get the projector that you want that much easier without breaking the budget, absolutely.
Right. I do have an article over at AV Cash that's called Expensive versus Cheap Projection Screens. What are you paying for? Kind of goes through all this that we talked a little bit, like we talked about, and even more. And at the end, there's a link to another article that has the recommended screens by different types. And again, it's going to be Silver Ticket Elite. Seymour AV if you're going with, if you want
acoustically transparent, for sure.
A Loon Vision too shows up there as well. So you can kind of go through that. I mean, the reality is there's exceedingly small differences between a fixed frame screen that's really expensive and a fixed frame screen that is of good quality, the kind that we would recommend, and is much, much, much cheaper.
I mean, it's really, really nice that companies like Silver Ticket and Elite exist.
Yeah, because there was a time not that long ago where a projection screen would cost as much as the projector that is right you were buying. Bertrand's living situation is a bit of flux right now, and a bit of flux for a while, and he was even looking at new places to move, but it is all settled down, and he's back in his house with a small but dedicated and fully blacked out home theater he constructed, so he's happy to be back and looking forward to watching Mission Impossible and Oppenheimer soon. What about Barbie? Skip Barbie. I want to see that more than I want to see the other two, to be honest with you.
Oh, wait, where's he at?
Firing everything back up, he notices Apple TV 4K got a new firmware update, and it might be unrelated, but now Netflix is only playing 5.1, no Atmos. He is definitely subscribed to the premium tier, and Dolby Vision is working perfectly fine. So any ideas how to get his Atmos back? Nope.
Well, this is a pretty similar situation. We had someone not that long ago, I think it was a different service, I think it was a different device, but this is one where there are settings app by app on the Apple TV 4K, so we can start there. Right. I mean, first of all, just double check your Apple TV 4K, because the thing, you've been away for a while, you come back, the thing with the Apple TV 4K is it loves to like reset its handshake quite frequently. That I've noticed that happens, so there's no no reason why it shouldn't have automatically, even if it even did that, shouldn't have automatically set itself to 4K output with HDR capability. But you could just double check in the system settings to make sure, because
especially
it is
with
possible.
An update that came out too. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it is possible that it set itself to 1440p or 1080p or something weird like that. So that's just one to double check. Then go into the Netflix app on the Apple TV 4K itself and check the settings there, because you can set, this is the most likely reason why this would happen, you can set it to the bring in as much bandwidth as you possibly can, or the cap it at a certain level, or the save as much data as you possibly can. Those options are in there. And if you're set to the middle one, where it's like, yeah, go up to this resolution, but cap the bandwidth that comes in on this service, it's going to limit the audio. You have to set it to the highest, leave the bandwidth as open as you possibly can for Atmos to work there. So that is the most likely scenario, is that there was a firmware update, an app update to the Netflix thing, and for some reason it set itself in that setting to the middle one, bring in at this capped bandwidth quality, and you'll just need to set that to the highest level. But it could also be the settings that are only available through your web browser on your computer at netflix.ca in your case, since I know that Bertrand is in Canada. They do have settings that you can only access through the web browser. They don't appear in the app on the Apple TV 4K itself. And again, it's going to be a bandwidth thing where very often it'll set itself to the standard setting, and there's the high setting and the low setting, and you need to be on the high setting for Atmos to work. So that is almost certainly what's gone on there. So one of those settings got set to the middle, the standard setting, and you need to put it back to the highest.
I don't know how long this podcast has been going on, but it feels like forever. I'll be honest
Well, I know. Well, but I had a whole break in there, so we've got at least 15 more minutes. That's the upshot of it.
Jared says he wants to thank us for saying the advice that people need to hear, not just what they want to hear. He loves home theater, and as such, he naturally seeks out as many reviews, posts, and YouTube videos as he can manage. And it seems to him that, in general, things are trending towards a lot of FOMO or FUD.
Fear, what is it? Uncertainty and doubt. There, that's FUD.
Oh, okay.
FOMO's fear of missing out.
Of course. With it always being a good idea to upgrade to separates or get an ever-increasing number of watts or just add more, bigger. It's always been the case in home theater. It's been a non-stop struggle.
And not just home theater. I mean,
that's true, too. Cycling's the same way. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people come in with bikes, and I'm just like, what is this? Oh, yeah, it helps.
Or, sports equipment for the people who are, really amateur, but they're like,
golf?
Nope,
oh, my God.
You get this new sports equipment. Yeah.
Golf is killing me. I will tell you what, though. The golf clothes they sell at Target, I know that you guys know I'm cheap. The golf clothes they sell at Target I like very much. And it's simply because they're a little bit more movable. And they tend to be a little bit dressy, but not too dressy. And because I'm never really all that dressy, and I do like those. So there you go. There's a review.
Yes.
We seem to be some of the only people online frequently letting people know that they don't need separate amps in most cases. He's seen plenty of posts with a headline like, "Is this overkill?" And of course, invariably the answer is always no. And they'll say something about effortlessness and no distortion and peace of mind as the reasons why they're certain that adding some massive amplifier to their clipped speakers is totally worth it. And somebody in last week's video or podcast is feeling targeted right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name any names because I don't remember them. But if I did, I would. Yes, it's dumb. But it's been dumb for decades. It hasn't just recently been dumb. It's been dumb for a long time. So he feels that we have personally saved him money, but for all the influencers online spreading that sort of message and the number of people seemingly buying into it, do we feel that it actually borders on being immoral? Like, fully intentional or not, is leading people into buying things they don't need a question of morality, or just buyer beware, or maybe somehow even a good thing in some way. He's just curious how we feel about it in general. Okay, so there's two types of people in the world, I would imagine, and I think that the second is far more likely than the first. The first is intentionally evil people that exist. Okay, so these are people who are like, I will take your money and say whatever you want me to say about your product. I don't think there's a lot of those people in the world. I just don't think that, like, professionally, I don't think you can make a living that way. I don't think that you will be successful that way. I think it's happened, from time to time. But I think generally speaking, that is not the way it is. There is a lot of maybe willful ignorance when it comes to reviewing products. There's a lot of excitement that goes into getting something new. You've all felt it. Every one of us has bought a product and been like, this is the best thing ever. And 6 months later, you're like, yeah, I kind of oversold that to myself and to everybody else. It is, there's a lot of that. And then there's the psychological, and I talk about this all the time on this podcast and on AV Gadgets. There's a psychological aspect of, I spent money on a thing, therefore I need to feel good about that purchase, because if I feel bad about the purchase, then that I'm basically telling myself and everybody around me that I'm dumb. So then
for the reviewers that are getting products sent to them, so it's not a case of they spent money on it themselves, I think there's a certain amount of like, I like this product, like I just like it. For whatever reason, I just like the way it looks or the way it feels or whatever. I like this product, so I want to talk positively about it because it does what it says it's going to do, so I'm not going to give it any knocks for that. And I like it, so I want to be positive about it. And I do want to engage my audience and have viewership and have, comments back and forth and all that type of stuff. So there's going to be some exaggeration in there. That's going to happen, whether you even really intended to it or not. I think that's just the psychological side of the reviewer who's going to end up feeling that way.
So you've probably been in a fight with your significant other at some point in your life, or a family member, and you've said the word always. that word has never been true, right? No one always does anything. That's just not the case. But you've used that word before. Now, were you being immoral when you said it, or were you just saying something for effect? That's, trying or saying what you felt at the time, or how it felt to you at the time. The question of morality is a very gray one, because it speaks to intentionality as opposed to, like I said, just kind of being like what Rob was saying, just being excited about something and wanting to convey that excitement in the way that the way that you are speaking. And when you read like audiophile reviews, I do not think those people are genuinely being disingenuous. I think they are genuinely being disingenuous.
Yes,
I think they are specifically taking you through the journey, the mental gymnastics they went through in order to find that product enjoyable.
Right. Yeah.
And you hear that in the entire review process. They put it in, they're like, I don't really like it that much at first. It always starts off there, and then by the end, they love it, and it's maybe not quite as good as some of the other things that they own, but it's really great for what it does. And now they realize that, and they can wholeheartedly recommend it for some people. Okay? That, I don't think is necessarily them being disingenuous or them being immoral about it. I think that they are actively telling you what they did. Now, I read that review and going, you're lying to yourself, and you're lying to all of us at the same time. Right. And the manufacturer of that amp or that DAC or speakers or whatever is helping you get to the point where you are liking it, because that's their job. They like their product or they wouldn't make it. They want you to like their product. They're trying to convey that to you. They're helping you like the product. And now that you do, you're trying to help everybody else like the product. That's all fine. I don't think that immorality genuinely comes into play until you get to the point where you are doing it and you are intentionally lying. You're doing it on purpose. And I don't think many people are doing that. I haven't come
across a lot of that.
No, I do think what does happen, though, is that reviewers like me, and I think it happened sooner with me than many reviewers who I don't think it ever happens to, they will get to a point in their career where they start to recognize those feelings in themselves.
Sure.
And then they will say, okay, wait a second here. Why am I feeling this way? I know I like this thing, and I want to talk about how much I like it, but, and you could call that being jaded, or you could call that being, whatever, having enough experience to...
Somewhat disillusioned a little bit.
Right. But I think what it really comes down to is you're able to see past those emotions and recognize those emotions in yourself and just say what you really feel. I get excited about...
There's also a bit of confidence and trust too, right?
Yeah.
It's the confidence in saying, I don't have to exaggerate or convey a high level of excitement.
Right.
The audience is capable of saying, okay, if your scenario fits the use case for this product, here's what it does, here's what it doesn't, here's what it claims to do, does it meet those claims, here's what it does well, here's what it does not so well, and that's a great review. You don't have to convey excitement for it to be a good and useful review.
Well, I mean, the other thing too you see is these YouTube channels, and I don't watch any of them, so I don't know, but all the people I see on the YouTube channels, I don't know any of them. I don't recognize any of their names. I haven't seen, and the more experience you get, the less likely you are to be this overly enthusiastic type of person. And I think, to a certain extent, the less, the higher end companies are going to want to send stuff to you. Like, I'm never going to get a speaker from B&W. It's just not going to happen. I'm never going to get an amplifier from Parasound, or literally anybody, I think. So, because they know, they're like, oh no, that guy, he's not the kind of person that's going to be excited about an amp.
Yeah, you're not going to be a salesperson for them in the form of taking the guise of a review.
Right. Yeah. So, I end up getting products from people who are like, we know this is a good product. We'll send it to Tom because he will review it and then tell us what he thinks. And that's what I do. So, therefore, I don't tend to get very many bad products in for review because they know that they're not going to be able to, like, companies. Well, occasionally, they don't do it very much anymore. They'll be like, okay, we'll send you this review, but we'd like to, the CEO wants to have a conversation with you first. I'm like, don't send it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to sit down and have a conversation with your CEO. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in hearing your sales pitch. I don't care. I will review the product. If I have any questions, I'll send them to you. You get them answered. That's the end of it. That's as far as I need to go. And I almost never have any questions. So, yeah, I don't know that it's immoral. There is, now as far as the buyer beware, I wrote an article on AV Gadget about how to read online reviews, and there's a reason for it, because you have, I read reviews differently than the common person does. My wife was just talking last night or the night before about wanting to write a good review for a pediatrician because she doesn't have any reviews online because she's fairly young and she's kind of new to the practice, and my wife likes her, but we're switching. We're switching because she's young and we need somebody with a little bit more experience in what's going on specifically with one of our kids in order to get him exactly what he needs. But she doesn't want this person to get bagged on. So, and she knows, and she said this when she was talking about it, she's like, I want to give him a good review because people really trust online reviews.
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's dumb. And she goes, yeah, it's dumb, but people do. And my son said, you guys trust online reviews. And I'm like, yeah, and it's dumb. We do it all the time for restaurants. Like, I won't even look at a restaurant that has less than 4.5 stars.
Right, yeah.
I just won't do it. Why would I?
Yep. No, I mean, I would love to get to one or two of Gary's questions just to get something off the list there. So I think we'll move on from here.
Okay. I don't remember what link I was about to go look for, but I was about to look for something. Reading reviews. So another common trend in the home theater community is, of course, lusting after infrasonic subs or subwoofers or sounds and claiming if you haven't experienced single-digit bass frequencies, then you don't realize how much you've been missing, and God forbid you challenge or question anybody about that. But in all seriousness, are any professional mixing and mastering engineers actually purposefully putting lots of infrasonic bass into movies and other recordings? There are the graphs, and I know there's not. There's graphs and signal analysis to show that some titles do indeed include infrasonic frequencies, and sometimes even at quite high decibel levels. But was that actually on purpose and with the intention for people in their home to hear them? Or is it kind of like an oversight where they weren't even aware that those frequencies were present, and they didn't bother to actively remove them, and never worried for 1 second about people at home playing them back? Is stuffing your spare bedroom with a dozen 18-inch subs purely a placebo, or is having all that output capability, including into the infrasonic range, having an actual benefit of any kind in the genuinely audible range? No. Everything you said or was it It was the or was it? They don't have, first of all, many mixing studios don't have as good a system as you have at home.
Yep.
The fact of the matter is they're not hearing it as good as you're hearing it, and sometimes on purpose. I talk a little bit about that in one of my articles. I don't remember which one, but when they're mixing things, they want to mix on things that are pretty good because that's better than what most people have, and then quite bad because that's what most people have, and that's what they want to. They want to make sure that it sounds reasonable on both those two things, and yes, if their sounds above 20 kilohertz, they are there on accident. No one put it there on purpose.
Below 20 or above
20 kilohertz
okay.
for your super tweeter jerk faces. And then anything below 20 hertz and maybe even below 25.
A lot of dubbing stages are actually set up for like 30 hertz.
Yeah.
And then if they happen to hear anything at 20, they're not at all confident that it's accurate. THX came along and was like 25. We got to get to 25 hertz, but not 20. So yeah, the idea that purposefully they're putting in stuff below 20 hertz that you're supposed to be hearing at home, absolutely not, like unequivocally not. And there's even like some of the chatter online now, like when Edge of Tomorrow came out on 4K Blu-ray, and lots of people were wondering whether it's gonna have the crazy low bass at the beginning there that was on the Blu-ray release, and it's like, I don't know where all the information came from exactly. I haven't read thoroughly enough about it, but basically one of the people who worked on the movie was like, yeah, that was kind of like an error on the original Blu-ray disc. Like that below 20 hertz stuff wasn't actually supposed to be there. And it's become like this reference test for everybody in home theater who's like, oh, it's missing on the 4K Blu-ray now. They're like, no, now the 4K Blu-ray is actually just the way it was supposed to be.
That's, and I know you want to go on, but I do want to talk a little bit more about this. And this is where we kind of go back to what we were talking about before with reviewers and stuff. People are like, oh, you've never heard it until you've heard this. You never heard that until you've heard this. And I'm like, we continually harp on this, but no one changes one thing, right? Yeah. They don't just take their current subwoofer, gate it off at 30 hertz for, all their life, and then mix, then gate it at 20, and then listen to it for months, and then let it play down to 1. And suddenly they're like, oh yeah, I can totally tell the difference. No one does that.
I've also seen these scenarios where it's like, they had the single subwoofer, that's where they started. They add the second subwoofer also at the front of the room, where the first one was also. But, by having the two at the front of the room, you do more or less make it almost like having the single subwoofer in the middle of your front wall in many instances. And there was like some improvement there. And then they're like, they end up with 4 subwoofers going across their front wall. And they're like, I don't have room for any more, so I put 2 more at the back. And it transformed my system. And it's all because of how much bass I have. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, it's because you finally by accident stumbled into proper placement.
Yeah.
You never intended to, but you finally did. So that's, very often the scenario that's going on there.
I'm so glad I turned the volume down on She Who Shall Not Be Named, because it's clearly the case here. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't hear her speak.
You're
I have to turn her up to hear her speak.
Remotely close to the wake word.
No, I think that's it's not even we got a delivery. We're gonna get a delivery.
I see.
I think that's what that is.
Heads up.
I apologize to all of you for having to hear that nonsense. Lastly, we've got Infinite Gary. Here's for instance, and perhaps a different way of thinking about approaching the common desire for bigger, better, more subwoofers. It's a thought that has run across Gary's mind. That's never happened before. And it could be a jumping off point for us to have discussions. So we, Tom and Rob, have said many times that we generally prefer, both for ourselves and to recommend to others, speakers, subs, and every other type of audio equipment that is just neutral, transparent, and tells it like it is. Whatever the signal says to do, that's what we want to hear with as little deviation and distortion as possible, at least as a starting point. We've also said that we're totally fine with anyone simply preferring a sound that is a little different from that. Tune it to your personal preference, as it were. Enjoy having some extra bass? Go for it. Prefer some treble roll-off or maybe treble boost? Have at it. Find the inherent distortion that's added to the signal by tube amps or turntables pleasing. Nothing wrong with that. For a specific example that came to mind for Gary is the famous roar of Leo the Lion from the MGM logo. Depending on exactly which MGM movie you are about to start, the format you're playing, and the encoding of the audio signal, the roar is going to sound however it happens to sound for that specific playback. And if everything in your audio system is super accurate, you're going to hear it exactly as it is, and that's all well and good. But what if you just want it to sound super ferocious and frightening every time, no matter what? What if you listen to death metal and you want it to sound like the singer's vocal cords are shredded to pieces beyond what any human could actually do? If you're starting with a subwoofer that is really accurate and has the appropriate output for your room size, would replacing it with a way bigger and more powerful subwoofer give it to you? No. It has nothing to do with power.
For multiple reasons.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, it has nothing to do with power. You're talking about EQ, and EQ can be done as if you can hit reference level, you can hit reference level. Now,
Sure.
if you're asking for, I want to feel like I'm at a concert, I want it to hit over 140 dB in my system. Well, then okay, then yes, the bigger subwoofer. But what you're talking about is EQ. If you want there to be specific frequencies where where the singer is that are boosted, getting the bigger subwoofer doesn't make that happen. Unless you're getting one or a bigger speakers doesn't make that happen. Unless you're getting ones that have a bloat in that area, which is EQ. It's just physical EQ from a inaccurate speaker.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
subwoofer.
the slight flip side to that is like, okay, you're getting the speaker or subwoofer with the additional headroom that would allow you to go well beyond reference volume.
Sure.
Because if we're saying, okay, we're playing it back accurately at reference volume and we're topping out at 105 in the speakers and 115 in the subwoofer, and I want even more than that, and I've only bought the product that is appropriate for hitting reference volume, well, then I need the one that has additional headroom so that I can go to 130 decibels, 140 decibels, or something like that. In that sense, there's some to it. But I'm going to say upgrading the subwoofer, even if the reason you're upgrading the sub is so that you can EQ it to, in certain frequencies, go well above reference volume, you're still not going to get it in exactly what you're talking about in the Leo the Lion roar or in a death metal singer, because those aren't the frequencies that the subwoofer is even playing.
No.
You're talking about considerably higher frequencies than you might imagine. You're like, oh, a lion's roar, which, by the way, Leo the Lion and the MGM logo is actually a recording of a tiger, because lions don't sound like that. They used a tiger's roar because it sounds more ferocious than a lion's. But the frequency that's going on there is like 160, 180 hertz. Like maybe your subwoofer is playing a little bit of that, but that fundamental frequency is primarily being played by your speakers in most setups, unless you have an abnormally high crossover frequency. So that's an instance where, like, if what you want is, look, keep in mind, if you do this, everything that dips into that frequency range is going to sound inaccurate, like very inaccurate.
Yeah.
But this is a case where it's like either you get the speakers that have additional headroom and then you pile a whole bunch of EQ in that, like somewhere between 150 and 250 hertz range, and make everything there sound way louder than it's supposed to, or you do insert something like a mid-bass module, an actual genuine mid-bass module on top of what you already have. That at least would give you the option of turning that off when you don't want this effect. But it means that anytime that thing is on, everything that plays in that frequency range is going to sound inaccurate to the signal.
Yeah, there's no AI EQ that you're like, only
yet.
When this person sings, boost it stupidly. So,
but as the question was asked, I can tell you full stop, just doing the subwoofer is almost certainly not going to have the impact that you want, because it just isn't even playing the frequencies responsible for what you're talking about.
He says, we seem to espouse that need two competent subwoofers that both have sufficient output and extension for a given room size, so that neither of them is reaching its limits, ought to be able to work together and essentially sound identical. So what accounts for simply hearing a difference in tone when you listen to one subwoofer on its own versus the other? For example, he has SVS 2531 PCI cylinder sub in one of his smaller rooms, and SVS PB2000 Pro in a different room of a similar size. If he swaps those two subs, the tone of both of the sound for both of the movies and music changes. Is the 25 hertz tuning of the 2531 PCI versus the 19 hertz tuning of the PC2000 Pro honestly different enough to account for that, or what else could be going ahead and make the tone of the sound audibly different? I mean, are you rerunning room correction? What else are you changing? Because it sounds like you're just swapping the subs out for different locations, plugging them in and thinking that they're going to be the same. That's not necessarily the case. These are both I mean, I don't remember the 2531 PCIs. I mean,
that's going back quite a ways. That was SVS back before the current group that owns them and everything.
Right. So I don't know how linear those were in comparison to what they have now. And even the ones that we have now are, I mean, they're linear, but they're not like completely exactly a flat line. I mean, I don't think that I would not EQ them at all, even though some people do advocate for that. So if you're just hot swapping them out, I mean, I would expect them to sound different. I also don't necessarily think that the tone that you're hearing that's different. I mean, that's 80 hertz and down. I mean, even if you're crossing over at 100 hertz, how much content are you actually hearing by itself at those frequencies that is that low?
Yeah.
You know, the speakers are making more noise than the speakers are. I mean, the subwoofers
determining that as tone anyway. If you're saying the tone of the sound changed when I changed out my subwoofers, forget whatever they are, is two fairly competent subwoofers and I changed them out, and the tone of my system changed overall, that is certainly possible. But it is an indication that there is a lack of calibration in one of those two that's going on, because it's absolutely possible where you bring in the new subwoofer and either because of slightly different placement, which changed the frequency response, or just sheer difference in volume, the effect that louder or quieter bass, fundamental bass notes have on masking the higher frequency sounds, it is significant. It makes a big difference. When I'm evaluating speakers, I make a concerted effort to play some content where I have, like, sometimes myself manually filtered off everything below like 300 hertz so that I can really key in on the mid-range and the treble. And despite whatever experience that I have, whatever knowledge I'm bringing into things beforehand, it is not possible for me to just like ignore the bass response of a speaker and just focus on the mid-range and treble if that speaker is playing that bass. It needs to be gone for me to hear the difference. And it is quite remarkable how much difference there sometimes can be between two speakers that when the bass is present, I'm like, oh, these are really similar sounding speakers. I filter off all the bass and it's like, oh no, there actually is a significant amount of treble detail in this speaker that isn't in the other one. And it's completely masked when the bass is there. Even if the bass isn't overblown, just being present is enough that my brain can't sample it out. There's no way you can do it no matter how much you concentrate on it. So having those differences in the bass is going to be a matter of the calibration, and the calibration includes the placement and everything like that. If you're like, I'm bringing one sub in and I'm putting it next to the other one and I'm switching back and forth between them and I hear a difference in the tone of the sound, it's like, that isn't purely what the subwoofer is doing, right? It's also the placement, it's also the calibration, and it has a bigger impact on the overall character. That's why companies focus so much on the bass of their speakers and talk about it so much, because the ones that tend to have, you know, this warmer sound, as they often call it, which is like a mid-bass hump in it, it can cover over, it can make things sound a lot more pleasant than what the treble might actually be doing. You just don't notice it. It masks a whole bunch of things when it's there. So it can have a tremendous effect, and that placement, as a result of how it interacts with the room, can result in that hump or that dip being there and really change the tone of the sound. So it's not the subwoofer itself, it's all the ancillary things with the setup of the sub. So I think that's probably good enough to cut there. At least we got a couple of them off the list and we can leave the rest for next week.
All right, let me scroll back up to the top here.
This is like a 3-hour podcast at this point, I think. I don't know where we are.
We've been going for a while.
I'm so discombobulated.
All right. Thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Tyler for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leaving us a PayPal donation, as well as our 134 patrons over at patreon.com, including Jared and Bertrand. Thank you, guys.
That is right, Tyler. Thank you for your PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 134 patrons over there. Jared and Bertrand, thank you for being two of them.
I want to thank Casey for talking us up to SVS. Thank you, Casey.
Yeah, thanks, Casey, and I'm glad that went so well for you.
And thanks for the notes of gratitude from Geoff, Jay, Julian, Jared, Casey, and Bertrand. Thank you for thanking us.
And I'll say the names one last time. Geoff, Jay, Julian, Jared, Casey, and Bertrand, thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We super duper appreciate them. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right. If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.